once I figured out who my real audience was, then all of a sudden crafting a marketing message became much easier and much more fluent, and reaching out to them and really building a content marketing strategy focused on them and what they need and how can I help them beyond just I can create videos for your customers, if you're at an agency, or for your
Right.
business, if you are, in the marketing department at a company somewhere, beyond that, I wanted to do something that was helping them. So I did create this whole content marketing strategy around that. And that's when things really started to pick up for T60 and helping our business.
We're back. 2023. Another year of podcast. Welcome to Over a Pint. I'm Pat McGovern. My co-host Kurt Langle. Kurt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, Pat. How are you doing? It seems like forever since I chatted with you.
I know it's been how are the holidays, man?
Holidays, Christmas was good. I can't complain. How was yours?
I was talking to Tony a little bit beforehand on this. The holidays were great. The holidays were great. They seem like a million years ago, right? It just like everybody, super busy. The only downside is my brother-in-law's son came down with COVID. That kind of put a kibosh on our Christmas kind of dinner. It was going to be on the 27th. And outside of that, man, I got to see the kids a little bit and got to spend some time to hang out. So it was great.
Isn't it funny? It's Thanksgiving seems like...
Did that ever happen? Right?
Forever ago. And, it's like before I was actually thinking about this a little bit. It's like 2022. What a blur for Over a Pint. We talked to so many great people. I can't believe we're into 2023 and away we go. Fasten your seatbelt. New year, new guests.
Dude, could you make a better kind of passing of the baton? That is an excellent intro because today we got on a kick-ass guy. I'm super pumped to talk to him. Tony Gnau. Tony is the founder and chief storyteller over at T60 Productions. T60 is an award-winning video production studio. But that's not what all he is. Tony's also now a very accomplished author. We're going to get into how well his book is selling. His name of his book is called Lights, Camera, Impact. Tony Gnau, welcome to the pod.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Tony, this is called Over a Pint for a reason. What do you got in front of you, sir?
I'm really boring. I have a cup of water in front of me.
A cup of water. Okay. All right.
And what's really funny about this, and I'll mention this, is that the first big customer that we had as at T60 Productions, the one that really sort of legitimized us as a video production company, was Goose Island Beer Company in Chicago.
My gosh. Sure.
And this was before they were purchased by Anheuser-Busch.
Yep.
And they, we went in there and produced a whole bunch of videos for them, on each of their individual beers and, all of this stuff. And the irony of that is that I don't drink. I don't drink at all. I never have. I always tell people, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with people drinking. It's just never been for me, And so I don't drink. And so they would constantly be trying to send me home with beer and stuff. And I'm like, guys, I'm just, I'm not going to drink it.
I'm not going to drink this stuff. That's funny.
So,
is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in Chicago and was around Goose Island when they first opened up. And back then it was just such a novelty. What is this? A place that brews beer right here?
Yeah.
My God, that was a million years ago. Mr. Lingle.
Well,
what do you got, sir?
I'm going with the Modelo.
Oh,
we had, Tony, we had a very good friend, former colleague of mine on early in 2022, John Alvarado. And John was the lead marketing guy on Modelo and Corona and all those good brands. So I got hooked just because we had him on. It's a good brand, and a good beer. I'm drinking that. But Tony, I will say this. So we're talking Goose Island for a second.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you what. I too used to live in Chicago, so I'm very familiar with the brewery. But I was watching a couple of the videos that you did. The beer that I very much want to get my hands on is I want to drink one of those. Is it the Père Jacques?
Sure.
That looked.
Yeah.
That looked good. That list
Yeah,
looked good, like just hearty and just like chocolatey and it looked good.
I know a lot of people are big fans of Père Jacques. That is personally, of like the videos that we did, that's one of my favorite videos. I just love the story behind how the beer got its name. So if anybody is interested, they can, they should go to our YouTube channel and type in
stuff.
Père Jacques, and they'll come up with that video.
I'm gonna try to get my hands on that beer.
Yeah.
Guys, today I've got from Mobcraft the vanilla wafer porter. There we go. My camera's never that good. Anyway, vanilla wafer porter. Kurt, we got each of us. We had Henry on earlier toward the end of 2022.
Yep.
We had a bunch of people in the house right around Christmas, obviously, and we did a whole kind of beer tasting with that advent calendar of beer that Henry was nice enough to throw our way, which was so much fun. So many great beers there. Hey,
Pat, can I just, as long we're kind of derailing this, Tony, I apologize. Now we're kind of,
that's okay.
Pat, I got to ask you, and let's get right into Tony. Did you have the bourbon ale that was?
No, and because, it wasn't because of any
reason to it.
My daughters and their boyfriends were just kind of picking out the beers at random, right? So that was one that did not come up yet, but yeah,
it's very tasty.
It's got a kick to it.
It's got a kick to it. If you like bourbon ales, it's oh so good. It was really good. So anyway,
cool. Well, that's what we got, guys, to start off 2023. Tony, welcome to the podcast. I gave you a little bit of an intro, but it was a half-ass type of thing. Tony, give us the story about you and T60 Production. Give the people a flavor, a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, I started my career as a TV news reporter, and I did that for about 10 years, and was sort of at a crossroads. I was considering a job at an affiliate in Seattle at the time. I was in Cincinnati, and I thought, am I just going to keep hopping around all these different stations? And the bigger the market you go to, the more news, like hard news, you have to do. And I was really more of a features reporter. I like doing people stories and stories on companies that are doing fun things. And I always used to describe it as like the good news of the day. But,
right.
The bigger the market you go to, the less of that stuff you kind of get to do. And so I didn't know if I'd necessarily be happy continuing my career and moving up the ladder like I was. And so I said, you know what, if there was ever a time for a clean break, at the time I was 31 years old, I said, you know what, now would be the time, because I'm not married, I don't have kids. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to move back to Chicago and I'm going to start my own video production company, and I'm going to start doing corporate videos. And at that time, I mean, we were all still just on dial-up modems and everything, but I don't think it took a genius to figure out that as the internet speeds were going to increase, we were going to see more and more video online. And I thought, this might be a good way to go for me, and take the skills that I learned as a journalist and apply them to businesses and companies. And so that's what I did. I moved back to Chicago, started T60 Productions, and I've been going with it ever since. I started slowly and started as my side gig, the classic like side gig, and I was working a day job at WGN TV in Chicago just as a producer and a writer and that sort of thing. And then over the years, the focus just shifted, and since then I've moved up to the Milwaukee area. We still maintain an office in Chicago, and it's been going strong. So yeah, that's kind of the genesis of T60.
So Tony, how did you make the transition though to, like, you were saying you were a reporter, right, and doing feature stories predominantly, right? And then how did you decide, like, yeah, I could do video production? Like, that seems like a pretty big leap, but maybe it's not.
As a reporter, when you go in to do a story at a business, at that time, most of them would hand you a video cassette and would say, here's our corporate video. And I would always take it and bring it back to the station and look at it. And I was always funny. I was like, what do they think we're really going to use this, like in our news story? But
Right.
I would take a look at it, and universally they were just terrible. And so when I was sort of at this career crossroads, I was thinking about it, and I was clearing off my desk, and I had all these corporate videos that I was getting rid of. And I was like, somebody makes their living doing these things and they're bad. What if somebody could do these corporate videos and actually make them good, actually make them interesting, and something that people, will respond to? And so that was really sort of, the light bulb going on, so to speak. And, that's when I decided that, and, again, corresponding with this sort of time in history in terms of the internet, and I like to think that I had some forethought there that, things were going to go in this direction. But again, I don't think it took a genius to figure out that we were going to start to see more video as the internet speeds kept increasing.
So you move back to Chicago, you start the business. This is a pod, Tony, about marketing. So for the people who are listening, and for me and Kurt, like, how did you start marketing the business? What were the things that you began to do in order to, get a foothold in this space, right?
Sure. Like, it's funny because I struggled with this at first. I mean, I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about marketing. It was the classic sort of creative person that's like, yeah, I'm going to start my own business, and I'm good at the creative end, but I didn't know anything about the business stuff. So I really started leaning on some friends and family who own their own businesses, and getting advice from them. And it was almost like a crash course MBA, so to speak. And, I went online and started, Googling for, different things about marketing and how should I be doing this. And, probably the biggest thing that I found, the blog spinsucks.com, that was founded by Ginny Dietrich. And that was really when things started to take off for me, because I started reading her stuff, and it was so good and really gave me insight that I never had before in terms of what marketing could be and should be. And really just sort of started following Ginny's advice. And the big breakthrough for me was really, my initial focus was sort of B2B marketing, like, I'm a business and I'm going to go to this other business and, hey, you should do a video and we should be the ones to do the video. And I just wasn't having much success with that. And it wasn't until I realized that my true audience, or my true customers, were marketers. And so once I figured out who my real audience was, then all of a sudden crafting a marketing message became much, much easier and much more fluent, and reaching out to them and really building a content marketing strategy focused on them and what they need and how can I help them, beyond just, I can create videos for your customers, if you're at an agency, or for your business, if you are, in the marketing department at a company somewhere, beyond that, I wanted to do something that was helping them. So I did create this whole content marketing strategy around that. And that's when things really started to pick up for T60 and helping our business.
A couple questions. That's very interesting to hear. Because I think a lot of businesses do work through those challenges, especially initially on, where do I start? I was listening a little bit, Tony, to you talk about, your background starting on the journalistic side as a journalist and as a producer. I think you had said initially it didn't seem like that far of a stretch, because I would imagine either way, at the core of it, there still was, it was all about telling a story. And it was about telling a story is in the most interesting way possible. And let's be honest, entertainment is part of journalism. It is. They're trying to entertain us, and that's not a knock. So I get it. I can see where some of the lessons, some of the learnings, some of the experiences you were able to carry over as you learned this new trade. But once you started the business and you're starting to figure out, okay, I want to go after marketers, I got to put together a content strategy. Did you also, Tony, were you taking a look at the types of businesses maybe you want to go after? Because I mean, Pat, your company is a digital-based company, us as an advertising agency, those are conversations we have. Who are we going after? Where's our sweet spot? What was yours? What were you finding? Was there a certain business? And talk through that a little bit. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is honestly something I still do today. Actually, this week and next week, I've kind of devoted to reevaluating that and going back and saying, you know what, things have been going well, but let's take a look at, who are some other companies, or what are some other companies, what are some other agencies that I should be maybe focusing some attention on and going after, so to speak. And so at that time, it was just, really, being much smaller at that time. And we're not a big company by any means, but, in terms of, like the business that we were going after, I was looking at that time for independent marketers, people that were not working at agencies, but, were, sort of doing things on their own and, going into businesses to help them. And so I was looking for people like that, so that, again, that light bulb went on. It was, if I could get, 2 or 3 of these people as customers, then they have multiple clients that they are servicing. And all of a sudden you're talking about, one person is providing us with multiple jobs that we can be doing for multiple customers. And so I was really going after sort of that independent marketing person that's out there doing it on their own. They are an agency of one, so to speak, and they need partners to help them with the tactical side of what they need to accomplish for their customers. And we provide a marketing tactic, in video. So, we wanted to be that solution provider for them. Now, as we've, gotten a little bit bigger in terms of our scope and who we're looking at now, it's like, we should be looking more at traditional agencies and being able to help them out. And we should be focusing maybe a little more attention on individual companies. And, for us, when we look at individual companies, at least what I've been doing the last week or two, is we want to work with great people and people who are fun to work with. It's not so much about just get as many customers as possible. It's more about, let's get the right customers that we're going to work well with and that we're going to enjoy working with. So, what I started doing was just Googling best companies to work for in Illinois, best companies to work for in Chicago, in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, our main 2 core areas, because we service the whole country. Like, we've shot in more than half the states. We've shot in 2 foreign countries. So we go all over for our videos, but our core business is in Chicago and in Milwaukee. So I was like, you know what? If it's a good place to work, then it's probably a good place to be a vendor for as well. And so that was kind of my thought process within the last couple of weeks in terms of investigating what are some companies that we want to do. And then now it's just a matter of like, do I know anybody at these companies, going on LinkedIn and seeing what sort of connections I have, and all that sort of thing. And, it's like, if we get one hit out of that, that's great. We'll see. But, that's kind of how I've gone about doing it.
Makes sense. And that's a common theme that it's hard for everyone to follow because we all want to chase biz,
right?
But I'm nodding my head and I'm like, you are so spot on. It's like when you can find those types of clients where you're just jiving together and the synergies, good things happen. It's a relationship, it's a partnership, there's trust, and it just grows. So yeah, good for you.
Thank you.
Tony, there was a lot there. I want to ask a question regarding kind of the early years, and you said you were getting advice and just Googling, trying to learn as much as you can. What was some of the best advice that you got, and what was some of the things that's like, man, I wish I would have paid more attention in accounting class, or what were things that's like, man, this would have saved me all kinds of headache?
Yeah, I mean, well, you nailed one right there. The whole accounting thing. I mean, that's something I still struggle with to this day. The irony is that as a journalism major at the University of Southern California, where I went, marketing was actually part of the journalism school. You
Yeah.
had
Wow.
print, broadcast, and marketing. So they were all
Interesting.
sort of, and as part of that, you have to take classes in each of those disciplines.
Yep.
And so I had to take 2 marketing classes at USC, and the thing that I walked away with is, man, I never want to be in marketing. And of course, that's where I've ended up, and love it and enjoy it. But in terms of like advice and stuff that I got, the funniest one is really more focused at me as a video creator. But at that time, it was like a difficult sell to go into a business and say, you know what, you should produce your own video. These days, it's not a tough sell at all. Like, companies know this is something they should be doing, and it's just a
Sure.
matter of how and why and how much does it going to cost. But at that time, it was like I had to sell them just on the idea of doing a video. And so, I mean, I was just starting. I didn't have any like corporate videos to show them. All I had were my news stories. And so I would show them some news stories of stuff that I had done at businesses, and I could do this sort of thing for you. And I remember going into a family friend and showing him some stories. And he said, wow, this is really great. Have you done a video on your own company? And I was like, no, I haven't. How
Yeah.
ridiculous that was, that I had not even considered that.
Yeah.
And so I immediately went out and produced, my first About Us video for T60 Productions.
Yeah.
But I think it's, sometimes it's funny because when you're first starting off with stuff like this, you're so in the weeds, or maybe it's like can you see the forest through the trees kind of a thing. You're
Yeah.
like in the midst of all of it, and you don't kind of see that big picture. And so I think really the lesson that I learned from that is, while you're working on the business and you're doing that every single day, it's important to step back and look at things logically, and maybe take in that whole forest and take more of a big picture approach to things, as opposed to kind of getting muddled in that day-to-day work that you need to get done.
You're a client. You yourself are a client. That's what I've always been. It's a lesson we're always learning too. It's like, got to treat your own company as a client too. Otherwise, it's so easy to, and it happens to all of us.
And
every day we're the same situation, Tony. Same situation.
Kurt, and struggling with that constantly. I mean, I do a big goal planning session at the beginning of every year to go over. And I think the last 2 years I have put on our list of to-do things is to produce a new About Us video for T60 Productions. And we haven't accomplished that goal like the last 2 years. And, I put it on the list again this year, but this year, there's an asterisk next to it. And I'm like, it gets done this year. It's kind of like last year it was publish the book, because the book that I wrote, Lights, Camera, Impact, I actually wrote during the pandemic, like when all of our business went away overnight. I thought, well, I've always wanted to write a book. Maybe this is the time to do it. I actually have time. And so I wrote it in 2020. And really, it just kind of sat on my digital shelf for, over a year. And in 2022, at my goal thing, my planning session, I said, publish the book this year. This is the year this gets published. There is, you have to get this done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of that way with the About Us video this year. But you're right. It's like, you're the last to do work for is your own business. And, and we struggle with that just like anybody else does.
Take comfort. We're all swimming in the same pool. We're all guilty of it.
Yeah.
So for sure.
Tony, one of the things that it's on your blogs, it's in your book, and you talked about it, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper now, is content and how you view content. And one of the things that's so unique and refreshing about you is your willingness to share things about, listen, you don't need T60. Here's how you could do it yourself. Right? I mean, you are very much, I will help you get to whatever position you want. If you want to do it your own, cool. If you want some help, here I am.
Yep.
How was a lot of organizations, a lot of people struggle with that. Was that easy for you to, I mean, were you like that from the get-go, or was there a point where it's like, you know what? I think I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah, but both of those. I
Okay.
mean, so first of all, no, I was not like that from the very start. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I'm like a lot of, I'm a marketer, but I'm also a business owner. And,
Yep.
if I'm doing something to market my business, I want to bring in as much business as possible. I want to, I want to see the fruits of my labor, when it comes to that sort of thing. So the notion of like just giving away something and saying you don't need us, it was like, forget it. Like, I don't want to do
Right.
that sort of thing. But the more I learned about content marketing and kind of what it is, the more receptive I became to it. And I just had too many people that were involved in content marketing that were seeing really great results from it to deny that this might be a good strategy or, something good to be doing for my own business. So, there was that. And maybe I'm doing it wrong. I mean, I was writing a blog post every day, 5 days a week, every week for a long period of time. I mean, I was getting zero results from it at all. And my big shift happened when I produced, T60 produced a video for Orbit Media Studios at their event that they host every year called Content Jam in Chicago, and it's
Okay.
just a conference surrounding content marketing. And I had gotten to know Andy Crestadina, one of their co-founders, pretty well. And I said, you know what, we'll come in, we'll do a video for free. Just let us put our logo at the end and, give us a sponsorship or whatever. And I thought maybe that would help drum up some, business for us. And so we did this video and it turned out really well. And at the end of it, Andy was like, you know what, this was so great. What can we do for you? I know we did the sponsorship, but this turned out so well. What can we do for you? And I said, well, I've been doing the content thing for a while and not getting any results. I'd love for you to just sort of maybe do a triage on what we're doing. Just,
Yeah.
sit down with you and have you take a look at what we're doing and, tell me kind of how are we doing this wrong? And so what Andy ended up, he of course said yes to that. And we sat down and what he said was, you're writing too many posts that are too short. So I was writing like, let's say 300 words, virtually every single day. And he said, your strategy should really be focused around writing something that's like 800 to 1,000 words and doing it less frequently. And then really promoting that piece. And so it was the best advice I could have received because he was absolutely right. And that absolutely worked for us. But the biggest thing was, I didn't kind of know where to start. And he said, what's the one question in your industry that people are constantly asking, but nobody wants to answer? No other video production companies want to answer this question. And that was easy for me. It was, how much does video production cost? And like, how do you figure that out? Like, where does that come from? Like, how do you, figure out how much a video costs? And so I said, I'm going to write the best piece on the internet on that subject matter. And so I, wrote this blog post, how to figure out video production costs. And that post just skyrocketed. I mean,
Awesome.
People were super interested in that and finding out how video production companies price their videos. Now, it's just how we price our videos. I'm sure it's going to be different from company to company, but it at least kind of gave marketers a sense of how it works. And it became really popular. And to this day, it is still our number one piece of content every single year is that blog post. And we've done varying things off of that. But once we had that sort of cornerstone piece to our content marketing, then everything else went well, as well for us. So it was a big aha moment.
Wow. Um, Tony, you mentioned the book earlier, Lights, Camera, Impact. It's an excellent book. You and I were talking a little bit about before we started rolling on this interview. Is your voice just comes through so nice and clearly. You well done writing that. A lot of questions for you on the book, and let's start with this. Just Why did you want to write it? I know you said, hey, this was something, you started in the pandemic. Writing a book to me sounds kind of sexy. Writing a book when you actually are sitting down every day trying to do this is probably, it's a slog. I have to imagine. But give us your take. Why did you go about, trying to climb this hill?
Well, I think first and foremost, I feel like there's all sorts of great information on the internet. I mean, if you want to go onto the internet and find out how to produce the best about us video or whatever, you can do that. If you want to find out how much video production costs, you can go on the internet and you can find that. I really wanted to produce something that was like an all-in-one guide for marketers that they could get. And it's like, it's all right here. Like, I don't have to go searching for it in multiple places or all over, like I have something right here in my hands that if I follow what this is, I'm going to have a successful video. And so that was really the impetus behind it, is having this roadmap or this guide for marketers to follow. And then it just became a matter of sitting down and doing it. And, thankfully I had all sorts of blog posts that I'd already written that were applicable. And so I had some place to start. I didn't just take those blog posts and put them in the book. I used them as sort of a jumping off point so that, like the how to figure out video production cost is in the book, but I've tweaked things, I've added things, I've, moved some things around. So it's new material, but it's based on what I had done before. So I wasn't starting with a blank page, and that made it, a little bit easier for me, I think. But, I'd say half the book is original. Like I did not, base it on any previous blog posts or anything. I really, I wanted to focus this on my audience, on these marketers who need my help. So I really went in and started looking at, which of my blog posts are most popular, which ones are maybe not as popular that marketers should be focusing more attention on. And I just wanted to give them a complete picture, a complete roadmap, a complete guide that they could have in their hands that is going to help them create better corporate videos.
And
go ahead. All I was going to say is, it seems to me, it follows for what I'm seeing, and even like spending some time listening to you and also doing some homework ahead of time on your website, whatever. Transparency seems to be, it's like, if you look at your website, you're talking a lot about transparency, and you're like, it is what it is. Here's what you have. There's no mystery. Let's take the mystery out of this. That's right. Loud and clear. And now with the book, here, I'm going to develop this. Here's a solution. It seems to be in line, Tony, with kind of your DNA and what's going on with a number of things you have your hands involved with.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, and that's intentional. I mean, one of our corporate values, one of our company values is transparency. We want to be transparent with everything that we do. And the book, I mean, right at the end of the year, the Content Marketing Institute came out with some amazing research on videos and how marketers are using them and perceiving them. And if you look at that research, I mean, the vast majority of marketers say that video is more and more important to what they do in their job. The scary thing is that I think it was like 12% feel like they get, the full potential out of their videos. That's it, just 12%. And the vast majority say that they get average or below average results from their videos. And that's like mind blowing, because, you have all these marketers that understand how important video is and are pouring money and resources into it. And yet they're not getting like the best results back from it. The good news is that those same marketers also recognize that the reason why is that they don't have a good strategy for video. They're kind of going into it. The joke that I always make is that, I think we've kind of all been in that meeting where somebody raises their hand and says, let's do a video. And everybody's like, yeah. Let's do a video. And nobody really has a plan for that video, and so what this book is, this is your plan. This is how you go about creating a plan to produce an effective corporate video, an effective marketing video. And it's less complicated than I think a lot of people want to make it out to be. I'm very sensitive to the notion that it's like, I'm a marketer for my own business, but our customers are marketers, and I don't like giving them more work to do, where it's like, where we're telling them, okay, you have to have a better video plan, and then not helping them with it. And, we can certainly, we have consulting services, and we can certainly help in that regard. But this is stuff that, they can do on their own. If they answer just a few questions before they start the video project, it's going to put them on the path to video success. And so it's like, why not give them a guide to help them with that?
Tony, in the book, you dedicate a chapter to a topic, a video that I'm really interested in, and that's testimonials. Testimonials have a tendency to range from just shitty to really boring, right? You dedicate, it's like, hey, testimonials are an important thing, and a lot of organizations really rely on them. Talk to us about your approach to testimonials.
Well, I think the where companies go wrong with testimonial videos is them thinking that it's all about them. They want to hear all about how great their business is, or their product is, or whatever it might be. But the audience at the other end isn't just looking for, them to pat themselves on the back. They have an issue that they're trying to solve, whether it's going to be through a service or a product or whatever this company provides. They have a problem or an issue that they're trying to solve, and they don't, they're not interested in just a company patting themselves on the back. So what I always recommend to our customers at T60 is focus the video more on the person giving the testimonial than the company that's receiving it. And the big reason for that is video isn't about facts and figures. Video is about emotion. We're trying to make an emotional connection with that viewer at the other end. And so by focusing more attention on the person giving the testimonial, you're allowing the audience to look at that person or that company and say, you know what? They're just like us. We have that issue too. We have that problem too. And now that we have common ground, when later in the video we get to the company, the product that solves the issue, now all of a sudden that recommendation has more weight, because we've looked at this person and said, they're just like us. Oh, they use this product to help with that? Okay. And they liked it so much that they're going to go on camera and talk about it and share that with me. Wow, that product, that service, this company must have really done a good job for them. So now if I'm ready to make that purchase, it's a little bit easier to do so.
Yeah. Pat, I'm glad you asked that question. Tony, that was a great way to answer Pat's question. I love the idea of dipping in a little bit more into testimonial. I was picking up on that a lot too with your company's belief, Tony, and what you believe. It's like, you know what? Capture the testimonial right away. It's like that should be forefront. But you're right. It's like, think about like a reference. It's like, yeah, it's kind of, there's no soul behind it. I mean, what do you think I'm going to do? Give you a shitty reference? That's the old joke. Like, you ask for a reference, I'm going to give you a reference. You think I'm going to give you a bad one? Or if you say, hey, just give me a testimonial, think I'm going to give you a bad one? I think what you're talking about, what I like is by taking it to that next level, doing it through video, doing it how you're doing it, you're adding the soul and the authenticity and the believability to it. Now it becomes something that's workable versus like, hey, you know what? Tony's great, Pat's great, Kurt's great. But I was watching some of your testimonials. You're taking it to a next level. It's like, if you're going to bother doing it, let's do it right. And let's figure out why we're doing it. So I applaud. I think you're spot on. It takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of commitment, but it's key. Well,
and the great thing too, Kurt, about that is like, once you start producing videos this way, like one of the hardest, as a marketer, we all know it's like, it's uncomfortable sometimes to go back to your customers, your clients and say, would you give us a testimonial? We'd really appreciate it. When you've done a few of these, you know how easy it is to get your customers to do testimonials for you when you show them the previous ones that you've done, and it's like focused on them and who they are as a company. The way I always describe it is it's almost like doing a little mini about us video on them and their business. And then in the last third of the video, you get to the, the part where you have solved the problem that they are having or whatever. I mean, it's so much easier to get your customers to do testimonials when they see these great videos that you've produced with your other clients or customers. And, it makes it so much easier to do that. And even better, what do you think the likelihood is that they're going to share that video once you've done it?
Totally.
They're going to share it. So now all of a sudden you've expanded your audience. It's not just, if they do a video where they just go on and they say, Pat and Kurt are great and I love their podcast. That's really a good podcast to listen to. They're not going to share that video with everybody, but when you focus on them and show what they do and who they are, why they do it, and what it is that they do, and the services that they offer, all of a sudden it's become a marketing video for them as well. And so when you're finished with your video and you pass it on to them, they're going to share it too. You just expanded your video's audience. It's a great thing to do it that way.
Tony, I want to touch base with you on this topic. If you look you up on LinkedIn, you've got Chief Storyteller in your title. Nowadays, when you talk to people, a extraordinary amount of people put storyteller next to their name. A lot of people still aren't good storytellers. Where are people getting it wrong?
Where are people getting it wrong? That's a great question. I think it's that people look at the information that they have to communicate as being the story, and they sort of craft their story around communicating that information. And I think that's kind of where a lot of businesses go wrong. A story has a character, a story has, the classic hero's journey in many cases where you introduce the character, you introduce a problem that they have, and then, a solution to how they do it. You don't find a lot of companies that are really looking at it from that perspective, the classic hero's journey, and it's a great method to use. One of the things that I like to do as a storyteller is I'm constantly looking for surprises. I think surprises are a great way to move a story forward and engage the audience. And so like when we sit down and we're trying to help a company tell its story, they'll throw out like every fact and figure they have about their business. But what we're always looking for is, what's the one thing about this company that people outside of it don't know and might find interesting? And that might not have anything to do necessarily with a specific product that they sell or service that they offer or when the company was founded or, any of that sort of stuff. And so we're always looking for surprises. And, obviously you want to hit like some big major surprise. That's always great. But even if it's just a little something that viewers go, I didn't know that. It re-engages them. It gets them to keep watching and keep paying attention. So it's things like that. But I think that just a lot of companies don't look at it that way. They don't look at it as though we're going to tell a hero's journey or we're going to look for surprises and things that are going, our audience is going to, be interested in. They're more focused on, again, they're in the middle of that forest. They want to focus on the things that they think are really cool or really great about their business. And they're not considering the audience that they're telling this story to.
Tony, I like the word surprises, and it made me think a little bit of, it's a good storyteller can take a shit story and make it better. By having the philosophy that you're talking about, those surprises, like anyone can make, like, if I hand you like the golden goose, like that's easy. But reversely, a bad storyteller can take a great story and turn that into shit too. So it really is, when you say actors, I mean, it just makes me think it is become a cliche, a storyteller, but it's really about digging deep and not getting lazy, and not just taking it, going through the motions, because I think about that. It's like, and again, Tony, I'm going to ask you. So when you were on the journalistic side, and it gets back to one of my original questions with you about entertainment and storytelling, how many times did the camera go on, or were you doing a story and you knew in the back of your mind, like, on paper, this isn't really that interesting, but I got to figure out a way to make it interesting. I got to tell a good story. I mean, that's got to have been a big part of helping you.
I'll give you an example. I'll try to bring it together. I'll give you the journalistic example, and I'll give you sort of the corporate example to kind of bring them together and show you how that works. I tell the story. I mean, probably the person who had the biggest influence on my storytelling is the CBS News reporter Steve Hartman. And Steve does the On the Road segment, made famous by Charles Kuralt, and he's the steward of that series now. For years and years, he had a segment called Everybody Has a Story, where he would literally throw a dart at the map, go to that town or that city, open up the phone book, throw his hand in there, and go do a story on that person. And Steve was kind of my mentor as a journalist. I called him when he was still at KCBS in Los Angeles, and I was in my first TV news job in Kearney, Nebraska. And I was like, I really want to do stories like Steve Hartman, but I'm not getting to do them. I'm going to call Steve Hartman and see what he has to say. So I called KCBS and asked for Steve Hartman, and I got through to him. And I said, I'm a young reporter. I'm in Kearney, Nebraska. I want to do stories like you. I went to USC, so I've seen all your stories. And how do I do it? And Steve kind of became a mentor to me. And the best piece of advice that he ever gave to me was always be asking yourself, why does this matter to my audience? Why does this matter to them? And if you can't answer that question, then you need to either go a different direction, you need to take out that piece of information, you need to get rid of that soundbite, whatever it might be. If you can't justify, why this is going to interest your audience or why they should care about this, then it needs to go. And so, the best story from my journalistic career was I did this terrific story in Cincinnati about a guy who had a safe collection, this ridiculous safe collection. And, initially my thoughts were, it's interesting because he has all these safes. He has hundreds of safes. He was a locksmith. They're all over the house. And then I sat back and I thought about it. I was like, everybody has a collection. And so what? Why is that interesting? And in passing, I had talked to his wife and she told me, I can't stand that safe collection. And that's what the story became. It wasn't about the safe collection. It was about how this has caused a rift in their marriage. She can't stand it. And I thought to myself, how many people are in that position where they love something, but their spouse doesn't, they have a collection, whatever it might be. And there's always this sort of, going at it over it. And it doesn't have to be anything serious, leading to divorce, but that became the story. So all of a sudden I shifted gears and, started telling that story, and the safe collection just became a vehicle for telling that story. So flash forward into my corporate career. We were doing a story for Habitat for Humanity, a chapter in DuPage County, which is one of the suburban counties surrounding Chicago. And, we're doing a Habitat for Humanity story. I mean, I say that and people are immediately thinking, you're a marketer, you're immediately thinking, volunteers, building houses, you can run down sort of the gambit of things, how you would sort of tell this story of Habitat for Humanity. And we thought all of those same things. And we went to the video shoot and we kind of had it all planned out. This is what we're going to do. And there were two companies that were their employees were volunteering there that day. Okay, that's our story. Companies sending these volunteers. And that could have been a very nice story. But in the process of putting together the video, we went to this one particular woman who's sitting there with her hammer doing her work or whatever. And I said, do you mind if I put a microphone on you and ask you some questions? No, that's fine. Go ahead. Put the microphone on her. We start asking her questions and we realized it's her house. This is the future homeowner that is there, sort of putting sweat equity into building her own house. And she was fantastic. And so now all of a sudden, you know, I'm thinking, here's a story everybody knows about Habitat for Humanity. And now here's a story that maybe a lot of people don't know, is that these people that are buying these houses are ultimately putting their own sweat equity in. At least in this case, that's what was happening. And so we focused the story around her instead. And so it's like when you're doing your corporate videos, you need to try and look at your business. You need to look at your product with fresh eyes as you possibly can. And, you know, once you start doing that, and especially once you start looking at it from your audience's perspective, your customer's perspective, that's when all of a sudden stories start to make more sense. You know, that's when you start to find stories that are going to attract your customers.
Tony Gnau, thank you so much for being on the pod. That's a great way to end things. Before we sign off, though, Tony, the mic is yours. Tell people how they come in contact with you. Pump that book. How are sales going on the book, by the way?
So sales are going great on the book. It's a #1 Amazon bestseller. So,
Fantastic.
I mean, you know, very, very happy with that. The response has been terrific. So yeah, certainly please, you can go to Amazon and, you know, you can find Lights, Camera, Action or Lights, Camera, Impact there. You could just type in my name, Tony Gnau. Last name is spelled Gnau. You can go to tonyknow.com to get the book as well. And I guess my last sort of shameless plug is, you know, if anybody out there needs help with video when it comes to their marketing, please go to t60productions.com and check us out. We do stuff all over the country, but we'd love to hear from you. And if anybody just has questions, you know, you have a question about video marketing, you need some help, you know, tell me you heard me on this podcast. I'll be happy to help you. You know, I'm not going to give you a hard sell or anything. If you just have a you know, little issue that you need help with, I'm happy to do that for you.
And I will just back that up. Tony, you have been nothing but very, very generous with your information, with your knowledge and sharing that. So please, people, if you're looking at a video, you got questions, just even thinking about it, you're just in the early stages, you're just kicking tires. Tony's a great, great resource. Tony, thanks so much for being on the pod.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.